The last words of Bormann's telegram reveal otherwise. The Chancellor has just changed his mind and announced to his generals he will not leave.
April 30th, 1945. Berlin was unrecognizable flames in the distance, buildings reduced to skeletons, the sound of gunfire echoing through the streets. The city that once stood as the heart of Hitler's empire was now a graveyard. Soviet troops were closing in, just blocks away from the Führerbunker. There was no way out. No army left to save him. No victory speech. But why? The man who once controlled almost all of Europe end up hiding in a bunker, waiting for his own death? What exactly happened inside that underground bunker in his final hours? In April 1945, Nazi Empire presence began to fail drastically. After being the capital city, Berlin transformed into a battlefield. The Soviet forces conducted heavy strikes on the city, which remained at a distance of a few kilometers. The destruction surrounded burned-out buildings and burned streets, with civilians protecting themselves any way they could. The Nazi military strength had deteriorated to such an extent that it lacked any capability to effectively defend against enemy attacks. The Reich Chancellery housed the Führerbunker, where Adolf Hitler established his underground hiding place.
A concrete sarcophagus, buried 7 meters deep in the gut of Berlin. An impenetrable fortress designed to protect Adolf Hitler from his enemies. It's called the Führerbunker.
Hitler remained in the fortified space he had intended for protection until it transformed into a place of complete sorrow. Hitler gathered his remaining loyalists inside this chamber as the situation showed no promising signs. The officers recognized their hopeless position, which led them to think about fleeing or surrendering. Hitler refused to see reality as he continued to issue unauthorized divisional orders after they had been eliminated. Inside the hidden shelter, Hitler experienced both physical and mental decline at a fast pace.
In the bunker in which he had been living for weeks, there was no sunlight in the bunker, and Hitler began to neglect his physical appearance.
At 56 years old, his state of anxiety, along with suspicion, showed him older than his age. His shaking hands appeared from Parkinson's disease while he performed limited bodily functions poorly. Suspicion about his most devoted colleagues caused him to develop an irrationally high fear that they would expose him. Each day of routine in the bunker became repetitious due to pointless military meetings combined with constant outbursts and lengthy periods of being alone. At one time, a source of defense, the underground shelter now trapped him like a tiny, confined space. The approaching Soviet forces made it impossible for rejection to persist. On April 30th, 1945, Hitler decided to die by suicide instead of falling into enemy hands as his defeat became inevitable. The Third Reich reached its final collapse when Hitler ended his life, thus putting an end to the dark historical period. Hitler had made his decision. He contacted his most trusted staff members to express his farewell words. The day after Hitler married Eva Braun in a brief official ceremony before his suicide, the poison capsules he provided to his staff served as an option for them to keep away from capture. To verify the effectiveness of poison, the Nazi leader killed his dog, Blondie. Hitler, along with Eva Braun, entered his private room during the afternoon hours. A single gunshot rang through the bunker during its 3:30 p.m. hour. Staff members who entered the room discovered Hitler succumbed to his bullet wound while slumped on a couch. The poison killed Eva, who was lying next to Hitler at the time of his death. The soldiers used gasoline to burn the corpses as they swiftly moved their bodies outside of the room and covered them with blankets. Berliner residents witnessed the flames of the fire, which coincided with Soviet troops conquering Berlin. The powerful Nazi rule had transformed into nothing more than burned remains. When Hitler died, Admiral Dönitz established a new government that later became known as the Flensburg government. Germany found itself in desperate condition because Allied forces continued their advance into Berlin while its capital lay in ruins. The unconditional surrender of the Allied forces from Germany took place on May 7, 1945, thus concluding World War II in European territory. Right after capturing Berlin, the Soviet forces led investigations to determine the fate of Hitler. At first, the public was unaware of Hitler's fate, which allowed different unproven theories to develop and spread regarding his survival status. Testimonies along with historical evidence validated the experiences Hitler lived during his time inside the bunker. Today, the site of the Führerbunker lies beneath a parking lot in Berlin, with only a small plaque indicating its historical significance. A strategic choice to maintain the area without markers during several years occurred to stop its transformation into a neo-Nazi memorial. The deserted Führerbunker space remains as an eternal warning about the fatal results caused by authoritarian governments and armed conflict. The lesson of remembered history demonstrates how these events should remain in our awareness to stop new occurrences of similar worse crimes.